Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. The purpose of today's call is to update you on our progress in Botswana and results from our Scout drill hole campaign, which was completed at our Virgo project located within the highly prospective KCB, the Kalahari Copper Belt, as well as then a short update on our drilling program in Zambia. We will be putting out very shortly, we're just trying to get it onto the system, an RNS on some of the details for Botswana, which you will get. Joining me is Vasily Karelis, our Chief Geologist and Chief Operating Officer. But before I hand over to Vasily, let me just make some initial comments. The aim of this maiden Scout drilling program in Botswana over both the licenses that we hold was to really test for mineralization and anomalies, also identify the lithologies below the Kalahari sand, and also confirm the lateral extents of this favorable geology. When we first acquired control of the Virgo project, there were some of you out there who queried our decision. Today, I am very happy to report some of the very exciting developments that I believe vindicates our decision to explore in this very exciting part of the KCB. Like with other properties that we've taken control of in Zambia, we were nimble, we did a lot of homework, and we moved quickly. And I think, as I've mentioned before, publicly, there was at least one major that came to us to say they thought it was a very smart move. And I think the details that we're going to go through today, and Vasily will take you through why this is so exciting, very much underscores, I think, a second major string to our bow going forward. So the drilling campaign in Botswana, with each hole spaced over circa 1 kilometer between profiles, has confirmed all of the three above with contact geology, copper anomalism, and mineralization, with one or two intersecting up to 3.65% copper assayed over one of the sampled intervals. Our first license, PL135, is surrounded on three sides by the Khoemacau Copper Mining Company prospecting licenses, who have recently, as you probably know, been acquired by MMG for $1.9 billion with a plan to double production. This license is located towards the southeastern margin of the KCB, occupying a similar geological setting to that recently drilled by Khoemacau at the recent Moana Fold discovery, where economic grades of copper mineralization has already been intersected by their drilling, and where we have intersected anomalous grades of copper mineralization as well. More on that from Vasily in a second. Our second license, PL162, is also partly bounded to the north and east by Khoemacau's prospecting licenses. One of the company's drill holes used to guide the positioning of the RC Scout drill holes intersected 3.65% copper and 24 grams per ton of silver. All of this amounts to very exciting early stage developments and will inform our drilling program in Botswana, which we're currently finalizing and which we intend to start soon after the IP survey is completed. The advantage of being in Botswana, it's got different rainy seasons or types of rainy seasons compared to Zambia, and it certainly is possible to drill through parts of this rainy season, and Vasily will update you on that as well. In Zambia, though the rigs remain in situ, we have had to pause drilling with the onset of the rains. As I've said before, when there are windows where we can drill through the season, if the rains permit so, we shall do so. In the meantime, we are finalizing our drill programs with our partners, Anglo, and we're due to meet together in Zambia very shortly. Gentlemen and ladies, we are on the brink of a very major drill campaign in Zambia. As I've said previously in the RNS, certainly one of, if not the most exciting years ahead for ARC, and twinned with the very exciting news on Botswana and further news flow to come on Botswana as we start drilling. I really believe we're in the sweet spot here. We can take questions at the end, but for now, let me hand over to Vasily and take you through some of this in more detail, and there'll be some slides for you to look at and we will put these slides on our website later on. Vasily?
Thank you, Nick, and good day, everyone. So location. They say if you want to make a discovery, you got to go to an existing mine. And here with our licenses in Botswana, we're quite fortunate in the holding we have. We are surrounded or bounded by Khomachao's package of licenses. For those, as Nick mentioned, and for those of you who are not aware, Khomacha have recently been acquired by MMG for $1.9 billion. Their current mines produce around 60,000 tons per annum, and they are now looking to more than double that production to 130,000 tons per annum of copper. In order for Khomacha/MMG to achieve this, they will need to start converting some of these discoveries and targets into mines. And this is where I believe we are quite uniquely positioned in that, particularly with our 135 license, we have got now discoveries on the boundary or the margins on either side of this particular license. Just to give you just the big picture, the line that you see going across is the section line below that, and you can see that these deposits are sort of situated along these sort of limbs of these stratigraphic horizons. And our license PL135, it looks like we're sitting with an anticline running through the middle of it. The interesting thing about anticlines is that they do tend to be hosts for mineralization, and the reason for that is that as you get these compressional and extensional forces, these stratigraphic units that make up the anticline, they react differently. They have got each stratigraphic horizon has got different geotechnical characteristics. Some of the horizons will be more brittle, resulting in a brittle deformation in the form of breccias, and others may be more ductile. And in other areas, you may actually have these dilational zones forming, or zones. And what this allows, it actually allows for mineralizing fluids to flow along, and in instances to actually deposit. And the image that you see in the top right hand corner is just a very it's just an image that I've grabbed to try and illustrate this. It doesn't necessarily mean this is what we have there, but this is the sort of thing now from a geological conceptual model that we'll sort of be working towards and seeing what we've actually got here. When you're starting off, the most important thing to sort of look into is say what are the neighbors are doing. And in our instance, when we went out and started our program, we were, within a couple of days of being out there, we were told that Khomacha had recently completed a drill program out there as well. So we went out to where they had been drilling, and as you can see from the photographs above, that's basically what it looks like out in the Kalahari, out in Botswana. You've got the sand cover with sparse vegetation, and particularly sparse during the dry season. And we went there and we located where they had done their drilling. We photographed the collar locations. We also took measurements in terms of the position of those holes with the GPS and also the direction those holes were drilled. It's normal to collar your holes and to name them, particularly for coming back to it for due diligence purposes. So when the consultant has to come out and verify that these holes were drilled, he can actually go to these collar locations and verify that he's physically seen them. So from the photographs, you can see each collar location has a hole number etched on top of the collar. The next thing to do is, apart from doing, looking what your neighbors are doing out in the field, is actually to go onto their website and see what is publicly available, what they're publicly disclosing. Now, Khomacha, they're a private company, and effectively they don't have the same disclosing requirements as a public company has. But what they did do recently is they put up a section image through one of their exploration projects which they were touting. And What they did do was they removed the prefix, but they did leave the whole number there. So if you look at the image below the photographs, this is actually taken from their website, and you can actually see 1395, 1393, and 1394, but without the HA. So it didn't take us long to figure out that these were actually, in fact, the holes that we had identified in the field. And better than that, we've actually now got the grades of those holes. And, 1393 at 4.3 meters at 1.65 copper equivalent, and 1394 at 6.1 meters at 2.56 copper equivalent. And that 1394 hole is roughly about 800 meters from our license boundary. And on that same image, you can see that they've actually positioned a future hole right on the license boundary. So moving forward, we were a little confused by the orientation they had drilled on their holes. And so if you look in this image, there's a lot going on. So I'll go through it, to try and explain in best detail I can. So the top orange blob that you see there overlying the geology is actually the Moana fold area. So that section that we've just seen, and those are the hole locations. And interesting, if you look at the drill direction, the direction that they were actually drilling towards our license boundary. So when we were out in the field, we were a little bit confused by this because we were actually drilling perpendicularly to where they had drilled. But now that we've seen the section line that they've got, the section line that they drilled is actually along their geophysical profile line that they flew. So this is a section along an electromagnetic survey, an airborne electromagnetic survey that they flew. So they've drilled along that profile line that was flown, whereas we were drilling to try and identify the contact and to see whether we had contact geology within our license area. We did have a soil geochem anomaly, and it's a very low soil geochem anomaly because you are picking it up through the soils, but you can see the red blob that we highlighted there. So we were drilling effectively away from our red blob. So the contact close to surface was actually further to the northeast of where the soil geochem anomaly is. To the other side, the other orange blob to the southeast is the zone 9 target, which we knew about. And that zone 9 target, those are the sort of intersections. They're not too far off what was being intersected by them to the north. And what we have here, we have the structural setting where on either side of the interpreted anticline, we've got mineralization, and it looks like we're sitting with the guts of this anticline. So it is looking quite promising, quite encouraging. And there's obviously a lot more work that needs to be done, but it does look like that in this license we could actually get quite lucky. Moving on to the other license, PL162. Here we actually intersected some decent grades of copper mineralization at the contact and in the contact, both by the rotary air blast holes that we're using to try and position, that we used to try and position the RC hole. So these are basically vertical holes that we drill down to bedrock so we can actually see what the underlying bedrock is through the Kalahari sand cover before we actually drill the RC holes. So that's just to save on RC drilling and to make sure that we're not drilling blind. But the nice thing about this license is it actually runs along strike from all the Khomakhau targets and discoveries. So it is actually in the zone as well. So what are we doing next? This is just a screen grab that I grabbed from an email that came through yesterday from our geophysical consultant. So like Khomakhau have done, where they've done an airborne electromagnetic program, we're actually going to run an induced polarization survey over the areas where we've got interesting anomalies in the soil. This will assist us in resolving some of the orientation of these structures, and also to help firm up on the targets for follow-up drilling, and which we expect to then follow up thereafter. This IP survey, I don't expect to take too long. We're looking at a couple of weeks, and then following that, we could be drilling. Moving on to Zambia. As Nick highlighted, we have stopped drilling because of the rainy season. From what we understand, the first hole that they drilled went down about 1 kilometer. And Anglo are actually following up on an AMT target that they had generated. So that actually, during the course of the year, had run an audiomagnetoluric survey, in addition to the geophysical surveys that we had run over the Chihuahua Chiesa area. They've then followed that up with what was effectively a stratigraphic hole, but they've actually positioned that over an AMT anomaly to give them some additional information about what's giving them that anomaly at depth. So in addition to the work that they've done, there's been quite an extensive, not desktop, but active logging going on site, where they've actually gotten a piece of equipment called a box scan. And with this piece of equipment, you just load the box, the core tray, into the scanner, and it actually scans the whole box. So it'll give do an XRF scan. It takes a photograph. It does magnetic susceptibility, as well as a few other things as well. So there's quite a lot of work that's been done. I mean, Anglo have effectively relocated their camp to the camp that we've recently established. So we relocated our camp closer to the main road. The reason we did that was so that we're more central to the license area. It's quite a big area that needs to be covered. It's 870 square kilometers. It could take you several hours to traverse from one side of the license to the other. But the main factor here was that there has been a power station, a hydroelectric power station, that's recently been commissioned by the Rural Electrification Authority in Zambia. And they've actually run power lines up and down through the license area, powering the villages, but also both chiefdoms. So we've been able to link up to that. Anglo have relocated a lot of their equipment in country to the site, so that's a commitment by them, that they see them not being here for a couple of years, but it looks like they definitely see themselves being around here for a while. And in the bottom left-hand photo, in the foreground, you can see a table with a Starlink dish on. That's a dish from Starlink. So in Zambia now, you do get broadband in the deepest and darkest places of the country. That said, at the same time, because the license area is so large and it takes such a long time to get around, there are fly camps that have been set up in the areas where they're operating. And where those fly camps are, they're quite, that's what they mean. They fly, so they're easier to pick up and move around. And obviously here the setup is a lot more nimble. And for example, your water won't come from a water borehole, but it will come from a river that flows through the license areas. And there's a lot of them, as we all said. There's a lot of rain up there during the rainy season, so you get these rivers flow all year round, and they're very pure. I mean, you can literally drink straight from the river. I think that's enough from me, Sasha. I'll hand over to Nick and to Nick now for queries.
So I'm just going to canter through these questions. Why did it take ARC so long to get the results back from the labs? It's a good question. I mean, this was really sort of part of our, harnessing and reducing costs whilst we were in this period of finalizing the Anglo deal. We obviously did not want to do a raise in that period, and I think we were again vindicated by that decision. We've moved up certainly from the lows, not in my view where we should be, but anyway, circa 3p. That was a good decision in principle by us not to tap the market, and so we had to cut our cloth accordingly, and we suspended all our salaries and fees for circa 8 months or so. And included in that was cutting back on the costs in terms of the assays results in Botswana. Second question: how did you manage to get a license wedged between the Khomekhau property licenses? Look, I think, as I said at the outset, and this all credit to Vasily and his team. We had identified the KCB some time back. We were looking at, sort of prospective properties, and I think we were strategic in our thinking, and we were quite nimble when we did move. Vasily, do you want to add to that as to why this was so interesting?
Yeah, as I opened up, I mean, if you want to find a mine, the easiest way to go is to start looking for near a mine, and this ground became available. Kapor were looking to sort of focus on their other licenses, and I mean, I think Remy had also picked it up at the time that this was up for grabs, and we all thought that this was a good move. And it's sort of beginning to bear fruit. It's still early days, but the fact is that there's a lot of activity on either side of our license, and we have the geology trending through the middle of it. So it looks like we might have the guts of it. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, I would categorize it as going to be an incredibly exciting year. I have to sort of encourage Vasily to be more aggressive on this, but it is hugely exciting, and I don't think we could be happier with the initial results.
It's going to be great. It's good. It's everything. It's ticking all the boxes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Budget. What is the budget for Botswana? We haven't finalized that yet. I mean, the IP program that Vasily talked about, that's very modest. It's sort of $20,000 to $30,000. The results from that will dictate our exploration program. But I'll let Vasily talk. But drilling in Botswana is one cheaper than Zambia and certainly other places in Africa. Secondly, the drilling to date that we've done is a few $100,000. So we're not talking millions or tens of millions here. So this is very much within our ability to get going quickly. And I think lastly, we can drill during the wet season. But Vasily, you might want to explain why we can drill.
Yeah, I mean, look, drilling through the wet season, as I've said, we're piercing through the Kalahari sands, and with the sands are different to soil and that we got in Zambia. So with sands, the water just seeps through. So you don't have that waterlogging effect that you get in the soils in Zambia. So and that's that's the issue with the soils, is that after the rainy season they're pretty waterlogged, and so the top surface might still look dry, but when you go onto the vehicle, if you don't have a decent dry portion to it, you just sink through it because it's still quite waterlogged. So that's the difference, really. It's the rain's obviously a lot less as well in Botswana. You don't have that same intensity that you do up in the northwestern Zambia, and you can see that from the vegetation. I mean, you can see from this image, that's an image from Zambia, big trees, whereas if you look at Botswana, it's sort of shrubs. That's all just down to rainfall.
Good, thank you. Are the Botswana government timely with permitting? Are there further permits required? I mean, we've had excellent relationships with the Ministry of Mines. I met the permanent secretary to the ministry, as did Vasily, I guess close to a year back. We asked for a little bit of leeway given the impact of COVID on us, and compared to other discussions I've had with other departments in other parts of Africa, it's chalk and cheese. I mean, they were so welcoming. They absolutely said, send us a letter and we'll look at it. And sure enough, they came back within 10 days or something. So I think their reputation precedes them. Botswana is a very stable place. It has been for a long time, and we couldn't find a better place to do business other than Zambia, which has really come into its own, almost similar on a similar par as Botswana, as being a very safe and a good place to operate with good governance and an established mining framework, which both Zambia and Botswana have in spades. So I don't see any issues there. Second, additional question: how regularly will the company be updating on Botswana results? Look, obviously we'll update on the IP, we'll update then on our drill program, and then as we start drilling, we will then naturally update you with the results from that drill program. So, I'm envisaging quite a busy reporting season on Botswana going forward. And then obviously, as the rains abate in the next few weeks and months in Zambia, we will obviously be getting going big time with Anglo taking over the drilling. And there'll be clearly a lot of news flow from all of those drill programs and results, etc. As I said, we're in Zambia in early Feb, and we're meeting with our partners, and we're going to agree in detail the next phase of the drill program, which is obviously the very large drill program that we've referred to before, where there'll be multiple rigs drilling at multiple sites, and we'll update on that as well in due course. Are there other companies having success in Botswana? The answer is yes. I mean, Khomacar, we've mentioned. I don't know. Sandfire.
Those are the two big ones that are going into production in KCB, or in production in KCB. And there obviously are other sort of explorers and developers that are sort of got ground in other parts of Zambia that are doing, in Botswana, that are doing quite well.
And of course, there's Debswana, which is De Beers and Botswana government, and that's been a long-established partnership over many years. Okay, how much of the $24 million phase turning to Zambia has Anglo spent to date? I mean, it's de minimis, to be honest. So I don't have an exact figure, but it doesn't even bear worth mentioning. So it's tiny, and the 99% of the funding commitment is there to be spent. So we're going to be drilling tens of thousands of meters and millions of dollars over the next few months into this year. And obviously, once we have further updates in terms of our drill program, and then obviously once we start drilling, and then once we get results, we will be actively updating you. I know everybody's after the latest details and RNSs, and we will, do as much as we can, within our power and within the results. As you know, we're not a group of managers that hype things up on the basis of nothing. When we talk, we have something substantive to talk about, and rest assured, there will be a lot of news flow over the next few months this year, starting very soon. Sasha, I don't know if there are any others, but I think, Vasily, can we look at is there any other Q&A there?
Just some more on Zambian news flow, I see.
Yeah.
Nick.
So have you had, I think we've covered the first three. Have you had any JV interest in Botswana? No, not yet. But there's no doubt in my mind as we start drilling, this I think we will be getting incoming interest. And I in a funny way, I almost see this as a replay of what we've done in Zambia. I think this is highly prospective terrain. We're sitting in the sweet spot with the major, with big plans, and we'll have to see what happens. So, but watch that space. Right, I think that wraps up the presentation. Feel free to email in any questions, additional questions you might have. As I said at the outset, I think really we're on the cusp of really a very, very exciting year ahead. The boat has previously been on the slipway. It's now been launched. It's in the sea, and we're moving fast ahead on two fronts, both Zambia and Botswana, both of which are extremely exciting for different reasons. And I couldn't be more excited with the prospects ahead. So thank you for listening in, everybody. And that ends our call.